What if I told you that while the world is pushing you to be fully invested, JPMorgan Chase is sitting on over $600 billion in liquid assets? Not invested, liquid. While they're telling you that cash is trash and every dollar should be working, they're keeping nearly 40% of their balance sheet in assets they can access within 24 hours. And they're not alone. Here's what I discovered when I pulled the SEC filings of 30 major financial institutions. The wealthiest, most sophisticated players in the world just don't follow the advice that they give to retail clients. They do the opposite. While they're selling you on market exposure and aggressive growth strategies, they're quietly positioning capital in what I call true liquidity, reserves that meet a strict four-part institutional test: accessible within 24 hours, deployable without triggering taxes or penalties, leverageable as collateral without liquidation, and preserved in value across market cycles. Today, I'm going to show you the liquidity doctrine that elite institutions use to stay wealthy across generations. Not the marketing brochure version that they sell to retail clients, the playbook that they use internally. By the end of this video, you'll understand why the most successful financial entities in history maintain 40 to 60% of their assets in true liquidity, and how you can mirror this strategy to finally break free from the performance-chasing hamster wheel that keeps most high earners financially anxious despite their success. Because here's the truth: you don't need more returns, you need more control. And control starts with liquidity. Let's use a simple hypothetical. We'll call him David. David is a software founder whose company has climbed to about $50 million in annual recurring revenue. It's profitable, but it's also reinvestment hungry. He pays himself a conservative blend of salary and performance-based distributions totaling roughly $800,000 a year. On paper, he's wealthy, but the number that actually matters is his liquid net worth, about $4 million. That's cash, brokerage, and real estate equity he could access without blowing up his position. He does not include most of his illiquid founder shares. Now picture what happens in real life. A key enterprise client delays payment 90 days. Payroll still hits on the 1st. A can't miss acquisition shows up with a 2-week close. David isn't broke, far from it. But most of his wealth is locked inside the business or tied up in assets that aren't instantly deployable without friction, taxes, or penalties. That's the gap I'm talking about. The gap between rich on paper and ready on demand. The families and institutions who win across cycles don't leave this to chance. They build a war chest so opportunities and surprises don't control their calendar. Here's what most financial advisors don't know. The institutions managing trillions of dollars don't follow the stay fully invested advice that they give retail clients. They do the opposite. Take JPMorgan Chase. They keep over $600 billion in what regulators call high-quality liquid assets. That's nearly 40% of their balance sheet in assets that they can access immediately. Not in a few days, immediately. Because wealth loves speed. And it's not just banks. Northwestern Mutual, one of the strongest insurers in the world, has survived every financial crisis since 1857, not by chasing returns, but by maintaining massive reserves of deployable capital. Mass Mutual, New York Life, Guardian Life, same playbook. High liquidity, conservative positioning, generational thinking. Now here's the kicker. These same institutions that keep 40 to 60% liquid are the ones telling retail investors to stay fully invested for optimal returns. So why the disconnect? Because liquidity isn't about parking money. It's about positioning for opportunity. When markets crash and everyone else is forced to sell, institutions are the ones buying. They don't call that cash drag. They call it firepower. Basel III, the rules created after 2008, don't require banks and financial institutions to hold liquidity as a suggestion. They require it because history proves that without massive reserves, institutions don't survive. So when advisors tell you the opposite will work for you, that's not advice, that's malpractice. Here's what I'd like you to understand. You're not failing at wealth building. Your model is failing you. You've been conditioned to think that sophisticated wealth management means complex portfolios, alternative investments, maximum market exposure. Sophistication isn't complexity, it's clarity. The most sophisticated players follow 3 simple steps: stack, shield, scale. Stack is where you fund a stable, compounding capital base that stays under your control, holds value in downturns, is accessible without penalties, and can be used as collateral without interrupting its growth. That's how you establish True Liquidity. Shield is where you borrow against that capital base. You don't withdraw. To acquire income-producing assets, you keep the entire reserve compounding while the assets you buy throw off cash flow that services the loan. Financial institutions use leverage as a strategy because it allows them to avoid triggering taxable events as well. Scale is where you reinvest the asset cash flow, the tax savings, and the profits to restore borrowing capacity and to buy more income-producing assets. No extra earned income required. That creates velocity. The reserve and the asset portfolio grow together, reinforcing each other over time. That's it. Not 47 different asset classes, not algorithmic trading strategies, not private equity minimums that lock up your money for a decade. 3 principles that every elite institution follows. And yet, retail investors are told that those same ideas are too conservative or they're a waste. Here's the truth. Opportunity cost anxiety is what keeps you broke. While you're worried your cash is not working, institutions are positioning their cash to work harder than any investment you've ever made. Because when everyone else is forced to sell during downturns, liquid capital becomes the highest performing asset class in the world. Think back to March 2020, when COVID crashed markets. Who made the most money? Was it the investors who were fully invested and just rode the roller coaster? Or was it the institutions who had the liquidity ready to deploy at 30 to 40% discounts? The institutions cleaned up. They bought distressed assets. They acquired competitors. They positioned themselves for the recovery. Meanwhile, retail investors were just checking their 401k balances, hoping for the best. That's the power of thinking like an institution instead of thinking like a retail client. If this is clicking with you, go check out the private briefing at warchestprinciple.com. The whole process is mapped out step by step. That's exactly why I created the War Chest Principle. I'm Christopher Hemmert, and after years of working with high-income entrepreneurs, I noticed something disturbing. These folks were doing all the right things: diversified portfolios, retirement accounts, real estate, private equity, and yet they still felt financially exposed, one crisis away from stress. What I realized was simple. They didn't need more performance. They needed a system designed to last. So I went deep. I studied how the wealthiest families and most successful institutions actually manage money, not the glossy marketing version that they sell to retail clients, the internal strategies that they use to preserve and grow wealth across generations. And what I found changed everything. Elite institutions don't optimize for performance. They optimize for permanence. They don't speculate on markets. They position for opportunities. The War Chest Principle is my way of giving you that same playbook, translated into a framework that you can actually implement. No family office required, no 7-figure minimums, no complexity that takes years to understand. Just the same principles that have kept elite institutions wealthy for centuries, systematized so that you can think like an institution instead of being treated like a client. Now, I know what you're thinking. This sounds great, Chris, but I'm not JPMorgan Chase. I don't have a team of analysts and unlimited resources. You're right, you don't need them. Here's what's beautiful about the institutional model. It's not complex. It's disciplined. You don't need alpha chasing models or hedge fund tactics. You need 3 things. First, a vehicle that gives you the liquidity characteristics of cash with the growth characteristics of investments. This isn't some exotic financial product. It's been available for over 150 years, used by the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, and Fortune 500 companies as their primary wealth management tool. Second, a systematic approach to converting earned income into acquired assets. Not speculative investments that go up and down with the market sentiment, but cash flowing assets that pay you whether markets are up or down. Third, a reinvestment rhythm that compounds your purchasing power without increasing your risk exposure. That's it. No hedge fund minimums, no private equity lockups, no family office overhead. The institutions that have survived every financial crisis in American history use these same 3 components. They just scale them larger and wrap them in institutional language that makes them sound more complicated than they are. But at its core, institutional wealth management is about control, not complexity. Control over when you access your capital, control over how your wealth grows, control over what happens to your assets when markets crash, and control over the one thing your portfolio can never replace: Your time. Because when you structure your wealth like an institution, you're not just building net worth, you're building what I call time freedom. The ability to make decisions based on what's right for your family, not what's necessary for your cash flow. If you want to go deeper, I've prepared a private briefing for you at warchestprinciple.com. It walks through exactly how to structure a capital system like we've discussed today, one that mirrors what the institutions do. You'll also receive a free PDF that outlines how the wealthiest families and financial institutions view earned versus passive income and how they structure for time, control, and tax efficiency. Again, that's warchestprinciple.com. Here's what I want you to remember from today. The gap between what institutions practice and what they preach to retail clients isn't an accident. It's a business model. When JPMorgan maintains $600 billion in liquid assets while telling clients to be fully invested, that's not hypocrisy. That's strategy. When Northwestern Mutual builds massive liquid reserves while selling growth-focused products to individuals, that's not inconsistency. That's institutional intelligence. And when the most successful financial entities in history maintain 40 to 60% liquidity while retail investors are told cash is trash, that's not a coincidence. That's the difference between thinking like an institution and thinking like a customer. You have a choice. You can keep following the retail playbook that keeps you financially anxious despite your success. You can keep chasing performance while institutions position for permanence. Or you can flip the script. You can start thinking like the institutions instead of funding them. You can build a war chest of true liquidity, not just a portfolio chasing returns. You can create a system that works when markets don't, grows when others shrink, and gives you something no investment strategy ever will: complete control over your financial future. The institutions have been playing by different rules for centuries. It's time you learned what those rules are. You've earned your income. Now it's time to earn your freedom by thinking bigger, structuring smarter, and protecting the one thing you can't get back: your time. I'll see you on the front lines. God bless.